The courtroom in Johannesburg smelled like dust, leather files, and old power. I remember thinking how strange it was that a room meant for justice felt so heavy, like it had been holding secrets for decades and never let them go. I sat on the wooden bench, my back straight, my hands folded carefully in my lap so no one could see them trembling. I was 61 years old. And that morning, after 38 years of marriage, I was finally asking the law to give me my life back. Across the aisle sat my husband, Samuel Dlamini. Tall. Polished. Calm. The kind of man judges nodded at before he even spoke. A man who had built half the city's roads and owned the other half through contracts, favors, and quiet threats. Beside him sat his lawyer, expensive suit, silver pen, a smile that said this was already over. Samuel didn't look at me. He never did when he thought he was winning. The judge was reviewing documents when it happened. A chair scraped softly behind me. Then a voice, young, steady, and completely out of place in a room like that. "Your ladyship, may I say something?" The sound cut through the courtroom like a blade. I turned. So did everyone else. Standing near the back row was my grandson, Cabello. 13 years old. School uniform under a borrowed jacket. His hands were shaking, but he didn't sit down. My daughter, Nality, looked at him in shock. Samuel's head snapped around. For the first time that day, his confidence cracked. The judge frowned gently. "And who are you, young man?" Cabello swallowed. "My name is Cabello Dlamini," he said. "I'm here because my grandmother doesn't know what my grandfather has been doing." A murmur rippled through the room. Samuel stood halfway out of his seat. "This is inappropriate," his lawyer snapped. "This court." The judge raised her hand. "Sit down." Samuel froze. The judge leaned forward, eyes sharp now. "Young man, what exactly do you think you have?" Cabello lifted a cracked smartphone. "I have proof," he said. "And I think my grandfather lied to this court." Silence fell so fast it felt violent. Samuel's face drained of color. And in that moment, before a single recording played, I knew something I had never allowed myself to believe before. I was not crazy, that I was not weak, and I was never alone. But to understand how a child ended up standing against one of the most powerful men in Gauteng. You need to know what life looked like before that courtroom. People used to say I was lucky. They would look at Samuel Dlamini, his tailored suits, his confident walk, the way junior officials stood a little straighter when he entered a room, and then they would look at me and smile knowingly. "You married well, Thandai," they'd say. "A real man. A provider." And for a long time, I believed them. I met Samuel when I was 23, fresh out of nursing college in Soweto, full of ambition and impatience. I wanted to work in public hospitals, maybe even go abroad one day. I wanted movement. Noise. Purpose. Samuel was 10 years older. Already respected. Already connected. He didn't chase me the way young men did. He claimed me, quietly, confidently, as if the future had already agreed with him. When he proposed, my mother cried with relief. "This man will take care of you," she said. "And you will never suffer." What no one explained to me was the cost of that care. After the wedding, Samuel suggested I take a break from work. "Just for a year," he said. "So we can build our home properly." Then I became pregnant with Nality, and the year became permanent. "Why struggle?" he asked. "I earn enough for both of us." When I hesitated, he smiled patiently, like one smiles at a child. A good wife doesn't exhaust herself when her husband can provide. At first, it felt like love. I didn't handle money because he was better with numbers. I didn't drive long distances because the roads were dangerous. I didn't visit friends often because people talk. Slowly, my world became very small. And Samuel became very large inside it. By the time Nality started school, Samuel had risen fast. Contracts. Committees. Awards. Dinners with men who shook hands too long and spoke too softly. At those dinners, I was silent. Not because I had nothing to say, but because Samuel would squeeze my knee under the table whenever I spoke too freely. Later, at home, he would correct me. You embarrassed me. You talk too much. You should listen more. I learned. I always learned. By the time I turned 40, I no longer remembered the woman who once dreamed of leaving the country. I measured my days in meals cooked, shirts ironed, and moods managed. Samuel did not hit me. That was important to him. Instead, he withdrew, affection, approval, warmth, until I apologized for things I didn't understand. If dinner was late, he didn't shout. He simply didn't eat. If I disagreed with him, he laughed in front of others. Thandai was emotional, he'd say. She worries too much. Soon, others repeated it. By the time Cabello was born, I had become a background figure even in my own family. Helpful. Quiet. Dependable. Invisible. What people didn't see was how Samuel spoke to me when doors were closed. How every mistake became proof that I was losing my sharpness. How every question was framed as confusion. How often he reminded me of my age. You're not young anymore. You forget things. You'd be lost without me. I believed him. Until one ordinary morning changed everything. The day everything changed did not come with thunder. It came with tea that tasted slightly burnt. I was standing in the kitchen of our house in Santon, the one people admired from outside the gates. Samuel had built it when his career peaked, glass windows, high ceilings, security cameras that blinked silently through the night. It was supposed to be a palace. It felt like a museum where I was both the caretaker and the exhibit. Samuel sat at the breakfast table reading the newspaper, his reading glasses perched on his nose. He always read the paper front to back, as if knowing the world gave him ownership over it. Did you speak to your cousin in Durban again? He asked without looking up. Yes, I said. She invited me to stay for a week. He folded the paper slowly. No, he said. Just that. No explanation. I stared at him. I haven't visited her in 5 years. He looked at me now. Calm. Disappointed. She fills your head with foolish ideas. Women who travel too much forget their place. Something in me twitched. Samuel, I said, my voice softer than I felt, I am 61 years old. I am not a child. He laughed lightly. Exactly, he said. You are old. That is why you should not be wandering around like a teenager. The words landed quietly. But they landed. I had spent decades swallowing sentences like that. That morning, for the first time, I didn't. I am going to Durban, I said. He blinked. I will book the flight myself, I added. I will go next month. Samuel stared at me as if I had spoken in another language. Then he smiled. But it was not a kind smile. You're confused, he said. You've been confused lately. I am not confused. He stood up and walked toward me, stopping so close I could smell his cologne. You forget things, he whispered. You repeat stories. You misplace keys. You ask the same questions. My chest tightened. That happens to everyone. Not everyone, he said. Doctors call that early cognitive decline. I felt a coldness spread through my stomach. Are you threatening me? I asked. Samuel sighed as if I was tiring him. I'm protecting you, he said. She watched Samuel the way people watch snakes, carefully. When Samuel left the room to take a call, Nality leaned toward me. Mom, she whispered, he's been telling people you're not well. I froze. Who? Neighbors. Church friends. His business friends' wives. She hesitated. He asked me if you've been forgetting things. If you're safe to live alone. My throat went dry. That's ridiculous. I know, she said. But it's strategic. The word felt heavy. He's preparing something, Nality continued. He always prepares. I looked at Cabello, who was pretending to play a game on his phone but clearly listening. Samuel returned and kissed Cabello on the head. Homework done? He asked. Yes, Grandpa. Samuel smiled. But Cabello didn't smile back. Children see patterns before adults admit them. The threat becomes real. 2 weeks later, Samuel drove me to a medical clinic. I booked you a checkup, he said. Just routine. The doctor was friendly. Too friendly. He asked me questions that felt rehearsed. Do you ever forget what day it is? Do you struggle with familiar routes? Do you ever feel confused about finances? I answered honestly. No. 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 Samuel sat beside me, nodding sympathetically. Afterward, he took me for coffee. You see, he said. They're concerned. About what? About you. I stared at him. Samuel, I said slowly, are you trying to make people think I'm mentally unstable? He looked at me for a long time. Then he said the quietest, most dangerous sentence of my life. I am making sure the court will never believe you. Cabello was always around when Samuel spoke on the phone. He sat on the stairs pretending to do homework. He sat in the living room pretending to watch cartoons. He listened. He noticed how Samuel's voice changed when he talked about me. How he laughed when he said my name. How he called me fragile, confused, unpredictable. Cabello didn't tell me. He didn't tell Nality. He started recording. Samuel stopped shouting after that. That's how I knew things were getting dangerous. When men like him raise their voices, it's because they still believe noise will work. When they go quiet, it means they've found another way. He became gentle. He reminded me to take my vitamins. Asked if I was tired. Suggested I rest more. In public, he held my arm a little tighter than necessary. She's been forgetful, he would say with a smile. But we're managing. Managing. As if I were a condition. One afternoon, I came home early from visiting Nality and found Samuel in his study. The door was half open. He didn't hear me at first. He was on the phone. No, not dementia yet, he said calmly. Just enough concern to raise questions. I stood frozen in the hallway. Yes, I understand. An affidavit will do for now, later we can request an evaluation ordered by the court. My heart began to pound so hard I thought I might faint. She won't fight it, Samuel continued. She doesn't even know she's being prepared. I stepped back quietly, my legs weak. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, realizing something terrifying. Samuel was not trying to scare me back into obedience. He was trying to erase me legally. Nality took me to see a lawyer 2 days later. Her name was Advocate Masiko, mid-40s, sharp eyes, no wasted words. She listened without interrupting. Then she leaned back. Your husband is setting up a mental incapacity strategy, she said. It's common among powerful men married to women who sacrificed careers. My chest tightened. What happens if he succeeds? Advocate Masiko didn't soften it. He could control your finances. Your property. Your movements. She paused. He could place you under supervision. I thought of Samuel choosing my clothes. My meals. My visitors. No, I whispered. You need to file first, she said. Divorce. Immediately. And you need evidence. I laughed weakly. Evidence of what? He's careful. Nality exchanged a look with her. Mom, she said slowly, Cabello has something you need to hear. Cabello sat on the bed that night, legs crossed, holding his phone. "I wasn't spying," he said quickly. "I just felt weird when Grandpa talked." He pressed play. Samuel's voice filled the room. Cold. Clear. Unfiltered. "She won't last long on her own," he said. "At her age, people believe anything." My stomach dropped. Another recording. "If the judge thinks she's unstable, it's over. I keep the assets. I keep control." Nality covered her mouth. I couldn't breathe. "How long have you been recording?" I asked. Cabello looked down. "Since the day he said you'd end up in a home." Tears burned my eyes, not from fear. From something else. Gratitude, love, rage. That night, I packed a small bag. Not clothes. Documents. My ID. Marriage certificate. Medical records. When Samuel came home, I was sitting at the table. "I'm leaving," I said. He stared at the bag. "You won't survive without me." I met his eyes for the first time in years. "We'll see." I walked out of the house I had kept alive for decades. And behind me, Samuel Dlamini smiled. Because he still believed the courtroom belonged to him. The summons arrived on a Monday morning. Clean envelope. Heavy paper. Samuel's handwriting neat and deliberate on the front, as if he were inviting me to a dinner instead of war. By Wednesday, I was sitting in a small consultation room with Advocate Masiko, the air thick with tension and old files. "He's moving faster than expected," she said, scanning the documents. Emergency applications. Affidavits from neighbors. A preliminary request for a capacity evaluation. My mouth went dry. "What does that mean?" "It means he wants the court to question whether you're capable of making decisions," she replied. "And he wants to do it before the divorce even starts." Samuel had not wasted a second. He claimed I was confused. That I forgot appointments. That I wandered the neighborhood disoriented. People I had smiled at for years had signed statements saying they were concerned. I stared at the pages. "They're lying." "Yes," Advocate Masiko said. "But lies are powerful when they come wrapped in respectability." The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Less dramatic. Which somehow made it worse. Samuel arrived early, flanked by his lawyer, Advocate Kruger, a man who spoke softly and smiled often. Samuel squeezed my shoulder as he passed. "Try to stay calm," he murmured. "Outbursts won't help your case." I felt myself shrink. Advocate Kruger spoke first. "Your ladyship," he said smoothly, "this is a tragic situation. A once vibrant woman entering a stage of life where independence becomes challenging." He didn't look at me when he said it. "She has recently abandoned the marital home without explanation. She has become suspicious, irrational. We are deeply concerned for her safety." I wanted to stand. To shout. But Advocate Masiko touched my arm gently. "Wait." When it was our turn, she spoke clearly. "My client has no medical history supporting these claims. What she does have is a husband attempting to strip her of autonomy." The judge listened. But her eyes kept drifting back to Samuel. To his posture. His calm. His certainty. Men like him always sound reasonable. Then the judge asked me to speak. "Mrs. Dlamini," she said kindly, "have you experienced any confusion recently?" The question was simple. But it carried centuries of judgment. I swallowed. "No," I said. "I've experienced control." The judge nodded slowly. "We may need an independent assessment," she said. "Just to be sure. Just to be sure." Samuel exhaled quietly, almost a sigh of relief. I felt something inside me collapse. That night, Cabello couldn't sleep. Nality found him sitting on the floor, phone in his hands. He's winning, Cabello whispered. I can hear it. Naledi knelt in front of him. Winning what? Everything, he said. Grandma. The house. The story. He looked up, eyes fierce. But he doesn't know about all the recordings. Naledi hesitated. Those could be dangerous, she said. For you. Cabello shook his head. He's dangerous to her. 2 days later, Samuel came to Naledi's house unannounced. He didn't know Cabello was upstairs. He didn't know the phone was recording. Your mother is humiliating herself, Samuel said coldly. Dragging this through court. Naledi crossed her arms. She's asking for a divorce. She's incapable of asking for anything, he snapped. She doesn't even realize what's happening to her. You're lying. Samuel leaned in. Listen to me carefully, he said. If this continues, I will make sure she never lives independently again. There was a pause. Then he said the sentence that would end him. I will own every decision she makes. Legally. Upstairs, Cabello's hands shook. But he didn't stop recording. The second hearing was supposed to be brief. That's what Samuel's lawyer told the court. Just a procedural step. A formality before the evaluation order was signed. Samuel arrived confident, relaxed, even. He nodded at the clerk. Smiled at the judge. He had rehearsed this moment. I sat beside Advocate Masiko, my hands folded, my heart racing. I had not slept the night before. Not from fear, but from the knowledge that something irreversible was about to happen. The judge began reviewing documents. Before I make any orders, she said, I want to be absolutely certain. Samuel inclined his head respectfully. Of course, your ladyship. That was when a chair scraped softly behind us. A small sound. But it echoed. Your ladyship, a young voice said, steady but tight. May I speak? The courtroom turned. Cabello stood near the back row. School uniform. Back straight. Phone in his hand. Naledi's breath caught. Samuel turned slowly. What is this? His lawyer demanded. The judge studied Cabello. And who are you? My name is Cabello Dlamini, he said. I'm here because my grandfather lied. The word lied fell like a stone. Samuel stood halfway. This is inappropriate, he said sharply. That child. Sit down, the judge ordered. He froze. Cabello walked forward, each step deliberate. I didn't mean to record him at first, he said. I just felt scared for my grandmother. The judge's expression softened, but her eyes stayed sharp. What do you have, young man? Cabello lifted the phone. I have his real voice. When Cabello pressed play, the room changed. Samuel's voice filled the courtroom, unfiltered, cruel, precise. I don't need her to be sick, the recording said. I just need the court to think she is. A murmur swept the benches. Samuel's lawyer stiffened. Another recording. She won't get half of anything. I didn't work my whole life to lose control now. The judge's jaw tightened. Another. I'll put her under supervision if I have to. She belongs where I decide. Silence. Not the polite kind. The dangerous kind. Samuel's face drained of color. Your ladyship, his lawyer began. Quiet, the judge said. She turned to Samuel. Mr. Dlamini, she said coldly, did you just confess to attempting to manipulate this court? Samuel opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Cabello swallowed hard. There's more, he said. Naledi reached for him, but he shook his head. Another recording played. Samuel again. If she leaves, I'll make sure everyone thinks she's lost her mind. The judge closed her file. Hard. This hearing is over, she said. Samuel stood, panic breaking through the polish. This is taken out of context. There is no context in which this is acceptable, the judge snapped. She turned to Advocate Masiko. I am denying the application for a mental capacity evaluation. She looked back at Samuel. I am issuing an immediate restraining order. No contact with Mrs. Dlamini or her family. Samuel's shoulders slumped. And, the judge added, I am referring this matter to the Director of Public Prosecutions for possible charges related to fraud, coercive control, and elder abuse. The word elder stung, but it also protected. Cabello's knees finally buckled. I stood and caught him. You did it, I whispered. You saved me. He shook his head, tears streaming. You saved yourself, he said. Samuel Dlamini did not leave the courtroom in handcuffs. Men like him rarely do, at least not immediately. Instead, he left in silence. No speeches. No righteous anger. Just a man suddenly aware that every room he walked into from that day forward would remember what he tried to do. By the next morning, the story had spread. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But quietly, through phone calls that stopped being returned, meetings that were postponed indefinitely, and invitations that never came. His lawyer withdrew within a week. The replacement was efficient and cautious, and during the first settlement meeting, he spoke to Samuel like someone handling a live wire. We recommend cooperation, he said. It's in your best interest. Samuel didn't argue. For the first time in my life, he had no leverage. The recordings had done more than expose him, they had redefined him. The court no longer saw a respected businessman protecting his family. They saw a man willing to weaponize age, marriage, and medicine to maintain control. The divorce moved quickly after that. Assets were disclosed, all of them. Accounts I had never known existed. Properties held through shell companies. Investments registered under names I didn't recognize. Half of everything became mine. Not as charity. Not as apology. As recognition. When the judge finalized the settlement, she looked at me directly. Mrs. Dlamini, she said, your contributions to this marriage were substantial, though unpaid and unacknowledged. This court recognizes them now. It was the first time an institution had ever said that out loud. Samuel didn't look at me. Not once. Freedom is not loud at first. It is unfamiliar. I moved into a modest apartment in Rosebank, sunlit, quiet, mine. No guards. No schedules. No one asking where I was going. For the first few weeks, I woke up disoriented. Not afraid. Just unused to choosing. I bought groceries I liked. Cooked when I wanted. Didn't cook when I didn't. Nality came by often. Cabello too, still shaken, still proud. At school, his teachers called him brave. He shrugged it off. I just told the truth, he said. The Director of Public Prosecutions opened an investigation. It moved slowly, but it moved. Samuel's name appeared less and less. Power, I learned, does not disappear dramatically. It erodes. One afternoon, Nality found me painting at the dining table. You used to love art, she said quietly. I paused. I forgot, I replied. I enrolled in a community art program the next week. Not because I wanted to be an artist, but because I wanted to remember who I was before survival became my full-time job. Each brushstroke felt like reclaiming a sentence I had never finished. I turned 62 6 months after the divorce. I celebrated quietly. Coffee on the balcony. Sunlight on my hands. No one telling me how to feel about my age. I sold my first painting 2 months later. A small piece, nothing extraordinary. But someone chose it. That mattered. That I joined a walking group. A book club. I traveled to Cape Town alone and didn't ask permission from anyone, not even myself. Cabello started debating at school. He says he wants to study law one day. To protect people who don't know they're being trapped, he told me. Samuel moved out of the city. Some say he's angry. Some say he's bitter. I don't ask. He no longer lives in my body. Sometimes I grieve the years I lost. That's honest. But grief no longer owns me. I have mornings now. Choices. Silence that heals instead of threatens. And when people ask how I found the courage to leave after so long, I tell them the truth. I didn't find it alone. It was given to me by a child who loved me enough to listen. Enough to notice. Enough to protect. I keep that old phone in a drawer, not as evidence anymore, but as a reminder. That freedom doesn't always begin with strength. Sometimes it begins with being seen. I am Thandai Dlamini. I am divorced. I am learning. I am free. And I am not finished yet.